it was so strange to walk into a conference, an event full of AV people. And my wife came with me, and she was just like, immediately knew we were in the right hotel because it looks like AV people, right? She's like, oh yeah, this is the right place.
These are my people.
Crestron Masters. It's an annual gathering of programmers and designers there to learn, develop skills, collaborate, and network with peers. We're going to discuss all about Crestron Masters 2025 next on A State of Control. Episode 129, Crestron Masters 2025. Welcome to A State of Control, the AVNation podcast that highlights the control programming and automation aspects of the audiovisual industry. My name is Steve Greenblatt. I'm your host. Thanks for joining us today. So very seldom do we do a time-sensitive podcast, but a few times a year we talk about some things that are going on in the AV industry. This is one of them, and it's something that we've done for several episodes over the course of about 5 or 6 years. And we're going to be talking today about Crestron Masters 2025 that was recently held in Madrid, Spain. And some of the past episodes about this have been episode 117, 116, 99, 62, and a few others. So if you want to go back to the past library, you can go check them out as well. And right now we're going to play a short video from some of the attendees.
At Sennheiser, we have found Crestron Masters to really be our number one best opportunity to find out straight from the guys who are deploying this stuff every single day, what works, what doesn't work, and really what we could do better. We talk to sometimes the procurement people, and these are the ones that we interface with. Well, they don't really know why the technology was selected, right? Maybe a consultant specified it. We never know who was the guy that designed this system, right? We've all looked at those proposals. So the great thing about Masters is a chance to talk to the people who every day are living, breathing, and sometimes bleeding with your products to find out what's working and what's not.
Come here for the connections, the in-person conversations, being able to talk to people about experiences and ideas. It's really unique to be able to meet people from all over the world who are doing different things, because I think every region, every country has its own little cliques and little things that they do. And coming here, you meet people from everywhere, and you get to ask them, how would you tackle this problem? What do you do in this situation? And you get just such a wide range of different connections that way.
As a what would normally be called an end user, my place is big on being an in-house integrator, and to operate at, if we want to be our own consultants, if we want to be our own integrators, we have to be wherever those people are, getting that training, getting that knowledge. And as kind of a longtime Crestron house, making sure that we are up with everything happening both in the industry and with Crestron is a key piece of success for us. And so for me, I'm here because I want to maintain my master certifications. On our team, we have now, I think 7 CTSs, and then varying levels of certifications with our manufacturers we use for that same reason. Is if we're going to act as pros, we need to be pros, and we need to have the same training that those we might hire out to do work would have if we're choosing to do it ourselves.
I have come to Masters because this is a great place to get a lot of information in 3 days. That typically, if you were to go to training, it may take you so much more. And then this is a place where industry experts are all gathered, like one place. All the experts from Crestron are all here. My industry partners or colleagues from different clients, integrators, everybody gathers here. So it's a great place to meet people and pick people's brains and hear other people's questions and sessions and get ideas of your own from those questions. So what's out there, what that Crestron's doing that we can adopt and make the experience for our end users better, right? Because our MasterCard employees are our clients. How can we make business easier for them communication easier for them? How can we make their day better?
This year's Masters, as I said, had been held in Madrid, Spain, and a few of those attendees are joining us today. So I'd like to welcome them. And before I do, I do have to say that my partner here at the State of Control, Rich Fergosa, will not be joining us today. And we reach out and send our messages to him. Nothing, no problem, but he had another commitment and he won't be with us today. So we'll miss Rich. So I'm going to jump into introducing our guests. The first guest is Ryan Gray from Yavapai College. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
And second, coming to us from Japan, thanks for being with us, Leon Appleby from MTC. Welcome, Leon.
Thanks for having me.
And last but not least, my friend and somebody who is the one that I'm doing podcasting here today because of. He is the founder of AVNation, and his name is Tim Albright. Welcome, Tim.
I don't know why I'm here, but I appreciate you having me.
Well, we love having you on the show, and you hosted the very first episode. So welcome back, and we're glad that you could be joining us.
I am as what my boss calls a failed programmer. So,
You could just say that you moved on from programming, just like
there
I
we
did.
go. That's what we'll say.
So Crestron Masters was something that has occurred for about 25 years right now. And it is always something that's well attended. It's been something that has really been a focus for programmers, elite programmers, to be able to come, network, learn, really understand and get comfortable with Crestron. And it was always a highlight on programmers' calendar. This has been expanded to include designers and consultants, and it's really become more of a conference than just a training. And so we're going to jump into some of the highlights of the event. I unfortunately wasn't in attendance, but our panelists can help to fill in those details. And so, Tim, I'll let you kick this off.
Yep.
Crestron Masters is something that you really had to make a commitment to go to, especially from the U.S. What were some of the things that really made it special?
So it was my first non-U.S. Masters, and Crestron has done Masters, I believe, exclusively in Madrid. I could be wrong about that, but they've moved to bouncing it back and forth between the U.S. And the EU the last few years as a recognition that there is a growing community of programmers and consultants that are in the Crestron ecosystem. So it was neat to see that community. If I'm not mistaken, this was the largest EU Masters that they have put on, almost 700 AV professionals taking classes, like you said, everything from actual programming to what I did is I sat in the modern work certification, which was more in line for sales designers and consultants, and really giving people an overview of the Crestron ecosystem when it comes to UC, when it comes to classrooms, and really they had 2 or 3 classes. I think 2 classes on the one beyond cameras and the VFX system. So it was a really good program for that, especially if you either aren't familiar with the product line or aren't familiar with the ecosystem. So from my standpoint, it was a good entry point. It was a good, it was 2 days of classes, right? 2 days of coursework. Keynote on Tuesday was really good because that they brought everybody together in this big theater and gave everybody kind of an overview of what they were doing and where they were going. But obviously every discipline had their own track and their own coursework. The other part was, and I know that I've attended some hackathons before, and I believe that was on the Tuesday of Tuesday or Wednesday of the event. But it's that part is more than just coding. There's all sorts of different hurdles to overcome, and I think there was 2 teams that won that event. So it was not just classwork. It really was community. Met up with a couple of our mutual friends. Neil Silver was one of them. and Neil posted something on LinkedIn about, yeah, the education is great, and not to dismiss that, but the community and the networking was equally important, to see and to communicate and to network with with peers, both in Europe as well as a number of U.S. and quite frankly, like Leon's an example of this, non-European and non-U.S. Attendees.
Ryan, I'll bring you into this because you also traveled quite a distance, and you could have certainly gone to this similar event in the U.S. What brought you out to Madrid, and what about this was made this a valuable trip for you?
Yeah, same for me. My first European Masters. It's I think my fourth, and I count the 2021 online one in that group. Yeah, no, I'm lucky enough to be one of those combo, master certified architect and master certified programmer. So it's always a little bit of a bifurcated thing, though. The architect is a little bit more where I am now with the programming support that we have on my team. Part of the choice to head out there this year was calendar based for me, looking at now that it alternates years and you have to hit these in a certain amount of time, making sure that I was keeping my certification updated. And that's important. Also gives me a chance to level up that architect, which I think kind of, continuing education is a key thing, I think, for everybody, and wanting to, no matter where you're at in the industry, get the next level, be it a silver, gold, diamond, or whatever other new metals, unobtainium level certifications they're going to have to come up with eventually. But the other really interesting thing was, it was so strange to walk into a conference, an event full of AV people. And my wife came with me, and she was just like, immediately knew we were in the right hotel because it looks like AV people, right? She's like, oh yeah, this is the right place. But I don't know any of them. It was so surreal. Every time I turned a corner, I would see somebody that looked like somebody I know from the US. So I would double down on that idea of community, broadening connections, because, the name of the game in education and learning and all that is, we know we need to keep up on our knowledge and the current state of things and what's to come. But we know that because it's always going to change. The connections to the repositories of knowledge that keep us updated, that's the more valuable thing. And man, there's no better repositories than your colleagues that are doing the same things. Even when so many conversations, even in open sessions, people talking about, if I have a problem, there are people at a competitor I would call for help, and they call to help me, because in the long run, kind of, we all do better if we all do better, and we all do better when there's, confidence and support in the AV industry as a whole, and in particular people, at this conference deploying Crestron. So it was a very valuable experience. Plus I got to stick around in Madrid for a little while afterwards. So that's never a bad trade-off.
Excellent. Leon, for you, this was also, a commitment to get there. I guess it would be not that much further to go to one in the U.S. But what about this event? What were some of your takeaways? What were some of the highlights?
Yeah, I think a big highlight was meeting people that I'd seen at Masters last year, and this is the only time I get to meet a lot of these people. Not just Crestron employees, but also other vendors that I'd met a year previously, kept in touch with, and then said, hey, let's meet up again in Madrid. It was also great to sort of see all the things that I'd sort of learned in the last 12 months coming around full circle at Masters, and getting updates on that and being shown, this is what's coming next, this is what you can look forward to. And it's pretty exciting afterwards, leaving the event and having all these ideas in your head that you can implement when you get back home, and little improvements and changes you can make to the work that you're doing right now,
which is very important. And I personally, I love hearing all of the networking stuff, because that's usually not something that you hear among programmers, and it's something that we really try to encourage, and we try to get people to come out and go to things. And I do think over time, this has really become the alternative to going to a trade show for a lot of programmers, because it's really where they feel at home.
Well, yeah, you've got, depending on the manufacturer, depending on the organization, the dealer, programmers have not gotten to the top of the list to go to Infocom or ISE, right? But so this is their trade show, right? This is their opportunity to not just get the education, but the networking, as we talked about.
I love hearing that. Ryan, why don't you share maybe a couple of the key elements that Crestron revealed, because maybe not everybody has received that information. They haven't been updated.
Sure. So, I mean, I think obviously, it's no surprise that the sunset of the fixed infrastructure switcher is upon us. I think Tim and I may actually have a bet on the last Infocom that one is going to appear. And after Masters, I think I'm in better shape on that than I was going in. But obviously that writing's been on the wall. But when you've got a firm date now, the Crestron DM infrastructure switch is done for. If you're not already moved over, I'm saying it's coming. But one of the themes that really came through in this is just simply, the move to building on standards and the enterprise IT influence on AV, right? The people who are used to getting out of box and going into its interface and deploying it, all those web interfaces now are just driven by the APIs they're just web interfaces driving the APIs. Why am I bothering with the web interface? I can do a PowerShell script and configure 100 of these things in no time. That was those sorts of things. And it was really obvious the people in the room who were comfortable with that and the ones who were uncomfortable with that. A lot of pressure on, they are definitely doubled down on getting Construct up to where people perceive it's at the same level as VT Pro, and trying to continue to have that sort of WYSIWYG designer for things. And obviously, bringing simple windows or some of those things into it. So again, it feels like making Studio all over again. We'll see if it goes better this time. But it was very clear the people in the room who are already beyond that, right? They're already doing their own HTML and CSS. They're already programming in other languages. And so you could see this real, like, one of my takeaways was that bifurcation of people who are still on the road of, no, I'm counting on Crestron to make the tools so that I can work in this new environment the same way I've worked before, versus people or organizations or people that are doubled down on, no, we're going to speak those languages of IT, and we're going to bring those into this realm. So I don't know how many other huge news breaking bomb drops of things, a lot of the product roadmap and other things I think was pretty predictable and things we've heard for a while. Again, I'll drop in that, one of these days I'm going to see a new DMPS and I'll be amazed. I have bets out on that one too. But really, I think especially for people, if there was their first masters or people coming into this idea of programming for AV and what that looks like, you know what I'm saying? I'd be living in the world of HTML, and, I'd be living in the world of scripting before I was living in the world of, object-oriented simple windows or something like that.
Very encouraging to hear. I'm glad that is the case. I mean, you hit on a lot of important things. And Leon, I was going to ask you to comment on that, because coming from IT, where it is a bit of a more standards-based world, and there is more of a global mindset. Do you feel like that things are headed in the right direction? Or I don't want to say right, because that's subjective, but do you feel like we're progressing in that regard?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And we're seeing that a lot in the way that AV is being deployed into customers now, where we're seeing a lot less of an AV IT divide, and IT teams are taking over management of this because they have the tools like XO Cloud to be able to monitor it and manage it the same as they would other devices that they have. The automation is a big thing because they can standardize everything. It isn't small islands of separate configurations that they have to look at. And I think a lot of the tools that are coming out from Crestron are helping to sort of make that gap even smaller. They talked about a new mobile app where you can just use the camera to scan devices into XIO Cloud, which is fantastic because it's always a bit of a pain having to make those CSV files and get everything together. I think a lot of the push on Crestron's side to get everything standardized from a security point of view is a big help as well. And that's something that we're putting into proposals to say, hey, security is something that you should care about. This is something that they are caring about. And it checks a lot of boxes for big customers when this equipment is passing over into the IT teams, where they do have more stringent standards to follow. And that's something that they take really seriously. So it's nice having that information from Crestron because it takes a lot of the burden off us to be able to prove those things or provide extra information.
So would it be safe to say that we are migrating out of the proprietary world? And I think that that's something that a lot of people have eyes on.
IT is, from a standards point of view, is very stable now. There's a lot of best practices out there that people follow, but the AV world is still a little more ad hoc, where a lot of people have more preferences than standards. And that makes it very hard to go into a customer and deploy something because you sort of have to feel out what is their preference rather than just saying, this is the best standard that everyone does and we're just going to follow the regular standard.
Tim, I'll shift gears a little bit. One of the things that...
Good, because I don't know anything that either of those people said.
One of the things that was discussed was True Blue, and that's
yes.
been a term that's been used for quite some time, and Crestron's really identified with it. But it seems like they've evolved it. Talk a little bit about that.
So yeah, I mean, and I'm half joking. I'm one of my favorite parts, probably my favorite part of the industry is control, and always has been. I'm just not smart enough to do it. But I've had a relationship with Crestron for 20 years now, and for 20 years, True Blue has been that support. Right, you call in. I'm in St. Louis, so our local-ish office is Chicago, right? And anytime I had an issue, when I was a tech manager at our local community college here, when you called, it was True Blue support, right? When you went online, it was True Blue support. And so now Crestron has taken that moniker, that idea of True Blue support, and they've expanded it. One of the parts of the keynote was kind of introducing that and saying, this is now not just True Blue support, it's True Blue community. They highlighted 4 or 5 True Blue VIPs, where these are folks who are active in the community. They support each other. Leon said it, and Ryan both, where if you have a question, I'm able to contact a competitor and they'll help me because they've had the same issue. That's one of the things that this new True Blue community is built for, is to have support. It's also where you're eventually going to get things like the applications and the software that you use to manage and program these things. It's where you'll find firmware. It's where you'll find documentation. But they're really kind of expanding what has traditionally been simply one niche aspect of Crestron, and they're really kind of growing it and opening it up to other things under the banner of True Blue.
Yeah, I think on that front, I mean, that message in the keynote was pretty clear. And after reflecting on it, I didn't think of it at the time, but what it really, you can see them following the model in higher ed, what we would call a community of practice, which is people coming together with a common purpose to lift each other up, looking for the best practices and seeing and acknowledging that, their user base is a great thing. The support doesn't depend on a Crestron employee answering a question. And really, if it follows and it turns well, then sort of their development and their information comes out of that community, of which they are not just a lead. They're not saying we're the leader. They're saying we are part of this community of people that move forward. So I love to see that, if they can follow that model, that's really where, sort of things can move quickly and they can move in unexpected directions rather than, just following a roadmap. The other interesting part, just from a support standpoint, they mentioned is really trying to double down on the effectiveness of what you get when you go seeking help, and their platform, knowing who you are, adjusting what you see based upon what you've asked for before. And you really see that sort of, whether AI driven or not, attempt of personalization to reduce the time from initial contact to, full satisfaction. So I know that, in big projects, for small as we are to the biggest ones out there, a couple of minutes saved here and there on things add up in a hurry. And you can tell they have been hearing that from their user base, the need to continue to make that process more efficient.
Leon, anything you wanted to add with regard to how True Blue is going to impact you in your role, and what are some of the benefits that you heard?
I think it's really interesting because as an Australian, True Blue has kind of like a special cultural meaning for us. So it's always been interesting that they had it as the sort of moniker for their support team. And I think it's really cool how they're embracing the idea and the layers of meaning it has for Crestron, with the logo being blue, the sort of meaning behind it, and the long history they've had internally with it. And I really enjoyed the keynote and the messaging they had behind that, which was, we're all in this together, we all succeed together, and that this kind of mutual support is really important to Crestron as a brand and our mutual success in this. I kind of blanked out in the middle of the keynote because they brought me up on stage. They've been harassing me all week saying, "You're going to enjoy this." I think like Masters, they also talked about how Masters is also like an embodiment of this whole idea where it's a really unusual event because you're sitting talking to the people who are engineering and designing this equipment, and you get this very raw, unfiltered feedback where they'll straight up go, "Oh yeah, we made a misstep with this product. It's got issues. We know that. We're working on it." Or you'll ask a question about something and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, in 2 months that'll be on the market. That's going to be fixed. That's going to be released." And you never really see that anywhere. And I think that's a big part of this bigger message where they do want to be very honest and very open about everything. And it's pretty clear they take all the feedback and complaints and whinging that we give them and turn around and turn it into something better. So the community site was an interesting start. The fixes to the support has been great because it's always, support is really key to what we do. Because when you have a problem, you don't want to be wasting hours on hold on the phone or Google searching an answer. And it's really nice to see they're spending time and effort on making these things easier for us when we really need that information at like the sort of worst part of the job.
Yeah, Leon hits on a key thing. Before we came on, you were talking about, Master starting with a dozen people sitting in a conference room, and even as it grows, and it talking about, whether it's a conference or, now there's exhibitors at it and that sort of thing, that you can see them trying to keep that original culture of this is the place where we close the door and we can tell the truth in a very non-salesy way. I was surprised many times about questions that would come and a stark answer, especially when it was definitely not going to make the person who asked the question happy, which is, I need to see the following thing happen with this thing. And they said, yep, nope, that's not what this is. And that's not coming. And you go, okay, maybe you feel a different level of trust, even in a room that's got 80 or 100 or more people in it than you do at a standard trade show or conference or something like that. They definitely want to continue to feel like you're behind the scenes with them, not just, coming to hear what they have to say.
Yeah. It's interesting getting that level of access where I'm like a dozen people company. I'm not going to stand out to Crestron, but they're still happy to give you time to have a conversation, give you that sort of in-depth knowledge, and treat you the same as they would treat anyone else. It doesn't feel like you're getting walled out or excluded just because of who you are and what you do. They're happy just to be open with everyone, which is really refreshing.
I recall one of the most valuable sessions and throughout the years for programmers was to be able to have that FaceTime with either engineering or the software developers or the product managers to be able to ask those types of questions. And so I'm glad to hear that that has continued.
I was just going to say the feedback that you hear from other people is always really interesting as well, where people are asking questions that you haven't even thought of. Mm-hmm. And then you also get to hear that conversation, especially on the programming side where I don't have that experience and people are asking things that I'm finding very interesting. So it's not just the sessions, you also have the people in the room giving feedback and you go, oh, wow, I never would have thought to use something like that or to like try to do something crazy like that. The other thing I'm kind of excited about is you get feedback from people suggesting changes or products, and you can sort of see people getting that like light bulb moment where they're like, oh yeah, that would be a great product or that would be a great change to things. And I've only been doing this a year now, but I'm really interested to see like this year or next year, how much of that pops up in firmware or in an actual product change.
And that's the great part about we talk about the move to standards, but I think things being software based, the hardware being built, knowing that it needs to support future things it doesn't take a new build to incorporate a lot of the things people are asking for. So you see that where you see that like a little look between the two presenters, like, oh yeah, that like we could do that one and we could fast track that one. So it's really exciting in the world of AV, I think, to go that way, right? Which is we're used to, having to wait to the next iteration of the product was shown somewhere and wait for it to get developed, to where now the next firmware rollout could make it a whole new product, which is really exciting.
So this is a great way for us to wrap this one up. I appreciate everybody's insight, and it sounds like this was a wonderful experience and something time well spent. So without a doubt, I'm sure that you would all recommend that those who are considering going to Masters in the future do take that opportunity, of whether it is the European version or the US version. It does happen every year, alternating locations. So please listen to our panelists and consider Crestron Masters if it's something that suits you in the future. So in wrapping up, I'd like to say thank you to our panelists and ask them to share how we could reach them and so forth. Ryan Gray from Yavapai College, and also podcast host of AV IT Amplifier, which is something I'm a big fan of. How can people get in touch with you, listen to your podcast, and learn more about what you're up to?
Appreciate it. Yeah. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find. Love to have everybody. Yep. Check out hireatav.com for a bunch of media there, and check out yc.edu for today's announcement of the first 3-year bachelor's degree in the United States coming from a community college in Arizona. We're very excited about it.
Fabulous. And Leon Appleby from MKC, how could people get in touch with you and learn more about MTC, I'm sorry. How could people get in touch with you and learn more about what you're up to?
Yeah, look me up on LinkedIn is the easiest way, or have a look at our website at milestonetc.asia.
And last but not least, Tim Albright from AVNation. And I have to say, Tim's been doing a lot of writing on LinkedIn, and I'm sure he's going to share that with you, but please check that out. And he undervalues the importance of what he does share, and I welcome you to check that out. How could people get in touch with you?
I was going to use my typical don't follow me anywhere, but yeah, if you want to look read something that I write that has nothing to do with technology or AV, you can check me out on LinkedIn.
And for those of you who are not familiar with AVNation or State of Control, there's a whole host of podcasts that could be found at avnation.tv. We encourage you to check those out. Many different verticals and many different areas of the industry. Please, while you're going to avnation.tv, check out the supporters and make sure you leave them some love and let them know that we appreciate them being part of AVNation. For me, you can reach me at Steve Greenblatt on social media. My company, Control Concepts, can be found at controlconcepts.net. We also help programmers by developing some of the building blocks, modules, drivers, and plugins that are needed to make projects work. So if you want to learn more about that, you can find it at controlconcepts.net. We did miss Rich Fregosa today, and we do wish him well, and we will see him on the next episode. And it wasn't the same without you, Rich, but we made it happen. That's what we have for today. This has been A State of Control,
the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.